Some stories don't begin with a loud bang. They unfold with a quiet, subdued feeling. This narrative blossoms precisely from such a point. I knew he was waiting for me when I opened the door. I knew it after my lawyer Patricia's phone call. But the moment I looked into his eyes, I realized that what Marcus had gotten was nothing like he thought he was getting. Marcus, the man I'd been by his side for 14 years. The man who brought our children into the world. The man who promised me forever, threw legal documents onto the table. He spoke as if reading from a script his lawyer had prepared. I want a house. I want cars. I want the business. Everything. No twin voices. No apologies. Just one man. Reading a list. Reviewing 14 years of marriage. 2 children. Everything they built together. Like an inventory sheet. Patricia took my hand under the conference table. She'd practiced family law in Atlanta for 25 years. She'd seen women ruined in divorce court. She'd watched husbands hide assets, manipulate the system. But the moment I leaned in and whispered what I was going to do, her eyes widened in surprise. We can get out of this. We have to. Georgia is an equitable state. We have options, he said. Then I looked at Marcus, the man sitting across the table, a mocking expression on his face. The same face, the face I traced with my finger on Sunday mornings. The man I stood by during his father's death. The one who promised me, in front of our families, I'll be with you through everything. Give it to him, I said quietly. Give him everything he wants. Patricia's pen froze as she signed. What did you say? She asked. You heard me. The house, the cars, the business. Give him everything he wants. Marcus's expression visibly cracked for a few seconds. He hadn't expected the surrender. Nobody had. Everyone in that room thought the same thing. This woman was finished. That night, my grandmother Eva called. Her voice was filled with worry and a kind of anger. My grandmother rarely raised her voice, but when she did, it was the listeners. She had raised 4 children after my father's death. She had worked as the school cafeteria manager for 30 years. She had never asked anyone for anything. For God's sake, what are you doing? She yelled. Didn't your father build that business from scratch? He started with a food truck outside Georgia Tech. He worked himself to death so your mother and brothers could have something real. And you're giving it to a man who doesn't deserve your loyalty. Grandma, trust me, I said. You know what? I know what I'm doing. She was silent for a moment. She breathed in a measured and deliberate way. Then she began to speak, her voice softer, but the anxiety was still there. Your father always said that patience, when held in the right hands, is a weapon. I hope you know what you're holding, girl. I know, Grandma. I promise. The next morning, my best friend Simone arrived at my house carrying coffee, beignets, and fire in her eyes. Simone and I had been friends since Howard University. We were both young, ambitious, and determined to build something meaningful. She had gotten into the real estate business, risen to managerial level, and never tolerated anyone's disrespect. Years ago, Marcus had given her a warning. Time was a subtle warning. Warnings I ignored because love was maddening. It wasn't elegant. Tell me, you didn't agree to give her everything. Patricia misunderstood. I gave her everything she wanted. Simone slammed her coffee down so hard that he jumped. Have you heard yourself? The restaurant you built with your family? The house you renovated with my own money? The investments you made during your marriage? While God knows what he's doing with them. Are you going to let him just leave it all behind? Yes. From where? I pulled a folder from under the table. Bank statements, bills, credit card statements, phone records, detective reports. I scrolled through it all the way down the kitchen counter. Because he really doesn't know what he's getting. Simone opened the folder. Her eyes scanned the first page. Then she looked at the second and third pages, which she turned to more quickly. By the time she reached the 6th page, she had her hand over her mouth, her eyes gleaming with a mixture of anger and triumph. Do I think this is what it is? Every single inch. And he has no idea, I know. She closed the folder carefully, as if she were holding something both precious and dangerous. When she looked up at me, she smiled for the first time since this nightmare began. Girl, you might be the coldest woman I've ever met. I say this with the deepest respect. Everyone thought I was defeated. They thought I'd given up. They thought I'd walked into that divorce hearing and surrendered my life in an instant. My mother called me crying. My cousins sent worried messages. People at church are praying for my broken spirit. But what did they know? They didn't know what was buried deep within 14 years of financial records, secret email accounts, and the digital footprints he considered erasing. Sometimes the best way to win isn't to fight louder. It's to retreat and remain silent, allowing the enemy to walk straight into the trap they've built with their own lies. When I walked into the final hearing where truth was finally going to speak louder than lies, I wasn't angry. I wasn't defeated. I wasn't crying into my pillow, wondering how my life had been shattered. I was patient. I was deliberate, and absolutely certain about what was going to happen. Marcus sat at the court table, seemingly already having spent the settlement money in his mind. Every Sunday he was shown in a different church, with his new girlfriend, a young woman named Chanel, a pharmaceutical sales representative, unaware that she was dating a liar and a thief. To renovate the restaurant, to rename it to bear his name, to extract every piece of our family legacy. He had already counted the money he thought was his. When I entered the room, he looked at me, and I saw it. That cold, triumphant look, as if he had won a prize he had chased for years. I signed every document presented to the judge. I accepted every condition Patricia negotiated under my instructions. My family sat in the back row, as if at a funeral. My mother wiped her eyes with a tissue. Uncle Frederick sat with a stone face, arms crossed, radiating silent anger. Then the courtroom doors opened. Two women in dark dresses entered. Their names were federal agents, and they had identification information on them. They approached lawman Jerome and handed him a document. His face changed in 5 seconds from confidence to confusion, and from confusion to utter horror. She whispered something in Marcus's ear. 4 words which I couldn't hear but which I read in such a way that Marcus's whole body tensed. His expression vanished. He gripped the edge of the table so tightly he turned bone white. And then he did something I'll never forget. He looked at me. He really looked. And at that very moment, he understood. He shouted my name. A cry. A full-blown shout. A cry that echoed through the courtroom like a misplaced animal's bark. The other judge ran over. The judge struck 3 times. But I remained seated, my hands clasped in my lap, watching the man who had once stolen my trust, stolen my money, stolen my peace. His friend dragged him to the door. He was still screaming when the courthouse doors closed, his voice echoing like a ghost down the corridor. My name was Belle Morgan. That was the beginning of our story. Patricia sat beside her desk, her professional demeanor steady, but I could see a slight smile at the corner of her mouth. You have enough evidence to ruin him, Belle. I can open this court case. I can expose everything, and I can make sure this man walks away with nothing. I don't want this, I said. Patricia glanced at him quickly. Excuse me? I give him everything, because greed blinds him. He wanted everything, and I gave him everything he wanted. Every lie, every crime, every trap buried within him. He built himself. When I walked out of the courthouse, the Atlanta sun was so bright that everything seemed new and possible. My family surrounded me. Everyone was talking at once, asking questions, demanding explanations. But Grandmother Ava pulled me into her arms and held me tightly. Your father would have been so proud, she said. So proud? It's not over yet, Grandma, I said. He pulled back and looked into her intelligent, knowing eyes. I know. But you've already won the hardest battle. You protected what was important. Everything else is just detail. As the story progresses, the emotional weight of the events becomes more pronounced, creating deep pressure on the character's inner world. The chain of events is not limited to external circumstances. It also begins to alter the direction of thoughts. During this process, the individual questions what they should believe, and this questioning turns into mental exhaustion. Each new realization shakes previous assumptions. This shock weakens the sense of security. The mind begins to oscillate between the past and the present. These fluctuations make decision-making difficult. Emotions become more complex instead of clearer. The pace of the narrative slows down along with this complexity, and the story progresses to a deeper level. Marcus's arrest felt like it was passing strangely. The hours seemed to fly by, but the days seemed to leap. When I walked out of the courthouse, the media surrounded me. Cameras, microphones, journalists shouting and asking questions. But I just looked straight ahead. I have a family, children. a legacy to protect. Ayana and Zaire were sitting in the back seat of my car. They were 9 and 6 years old. They more or less understood that their father had been arrested. Old enough to ask questions, but too young to fully comprehend. Zaire was clinging to her sister. Ayana was looking out the window, with the expression of a child trying not to process anything. "Mom," Ayana said at the exit, "where's Dad?" I paused and gave a thoughtful answer. "Dad made some bad choices, sweetie. Now he has to face the consequences. But I'm here. I'll always be here." Zaire was just sleeping. Children sometimes just let things get to them through sleep, even when they're very complicated to understand. When we got home, Simone was waiting for us. She was making coffee in the kitchen, and there were cakes in the fridge. She's just there spontaneously. That's what a best friend is, someone who doesn't expect to talk. Just someone who's there. On the way back to eat cake with the kids, Simone and we sat in the living room, saying nothing, listening to the heavy sounds of everything. "I know you're doing this confidently, right?" he said then. "We have no doubt, but I just want to be sure." "Yes," I said. "I did it without lightning, using patience and intelligence." He was engrossed in his own affairs, Simone. In his own lies. In his own ambition. "So, what about that $215,000? Most of the remaining money?" Federal agents had frozen all the accounts. Much of the money Marcus sent to his home countries was frozen through asset confiscation and court orders. Lawyers are calculating, but no one knows exactly how much can actually be recovered. "Restitution will happen," I said. "Marcus will have to return all the stolen money. He has no other option. We secured that in court." Simone nodded. "Can you save the restaurant?" This question was what I'd been thinking about all night. The restaurant's finances had taken a serious hit. Marcus had 9 months to clean up, process loans and debts, prove to the vendors he was human. Some long-term employees had started looking worried about losing their jobs. Some vendors had become anxious about getting paid. But when I started this project, I knew I would bring it back. Not just me, the whole team. The next day, I went to the restaurant. Although the main door was closed, Keisha, the head chef who had been there for 15 years, came in through the back door. She was supposed to follow it. Diane Mitchell, the manager, sat at the top of the coffee counter. I gathered everyone in the office. Keisha, Danny, Maria, and a dozen others. Their faces were anxious, scared, confused. They had lived in this business for decades. This business was their family, and their family looked shattered. "I have to tell you everything," I said, leaving the door open. "I shouldn't keep anything from you." Then I gave it to him. That Marcus had stolen it. Over $215,000. Federal investigation. Arrest. Everything. There was silence in the room. A heavy electric silence. Then Keisha stood up. "Belle, I've known this man for 9 years. I never knew he was a fraud. But I know you. I saw you with your father setting up this business. I saw you there, working 70 hours a week, growing this place, raising your family. I'm staying with you. I'm always staying with you." The others agreed. Danny, Maria, then everyone else. A feeling began. Not just forgiveness. Rebuilding together. Staying together. "Right now, this business is in a bad financial position," I said. "But we're going to save it. And we're going to save it. Not just as my business, but as our business." The next 2 months were spent in federal courts and handling deposits. It was packed. Marcus's lawyer, Jerome, made ridiculous defenses. He claimed another accountant was at fault. He claimed he couldn't understand why Marcus signed the documents. He claimed another client had pressured and incited him. Nothing worked. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial crimes expert Elijah Green showed Marcus's signatures, his mail, every statement. That Marcus had transferred money to accounts in cream-of-the-mill countries. That he had set up shell companies, with dozens of lies, 11 money transfers, immeasurable theft. No defense held. 4 months later, Marcus made a deal. 4 years in federal prison, repayment of all stolen money, no claims on Carter's kitchen, a permanent criminal record. His life was ruined. End of career. End of credibility. End of everything. Chanel left him 3 weeks after his arrest. She had found out about his marriage. They had overheard conversations and a detective had uncovered his affair. Finally, she learned he was just her plaything with valuable money, exclusive hotels and fake affection. The mainstream media picked up the story. Local news outlets, Atlanta Magazine, business industry sites. The story wasn't just about what happened, but about how I responded. I didn't cry back at anything. I didn't give any vitriol responses. Just calm, strategic, planned. I read one headline. Local business owner uses smart tactics against husband who cheated her in divorce. Another. Woman saves restaurant. Wages strategic battle for justice. Yet another. The story of Belle Morgan coming back from a breach of trust. And I want to say all this, it was about my grandmother Ava's saying, patience in the right hands is a weapon. I became patience. I became the strategy. I became the result. I started rebuilding the restaurant. But not alone. I brought Keisha with me. I made the head chef the president. I made Danny the operations manager. I made Maria the service manager. And I introduced profit sharing. Every employee got a salary increase. They got stock options. They got training in financial literacy. I don't want anyone to have to go through what I went through, I told them. No employee should ever be manipulated by a jealous husband who is completely in control. No employee should ever be left without knowing where their money is going. That period unfolded with me. Customers returned. New customers came in. Churches asked us for catering. Universities asked us to be sponsors. The neighborhood saw us as a supported business run by a Black woman, liberated from oppression, reborn. Within 6 months, the restaurant's profitability was back on track. Within 9 months, I started investing. Within a year, I opened a second location in the park, a working-class neighborhood. Strong community ties. People who love good food. My grandmother came to me at the location's opening. She stood in the kitchen, the same place my grandmother's father had built. She had tears in her eyes, but she was smiling. Your father would be proud, she said. If your father could see you, how strong you are, how determined you are, your father would be proud of you. I always knew that, Grandma, I said. It just took me to understand it, in my own way. On the other side of the courtroom, Marcus began counting in federal prison. 4 years. 9 months of sitting still. Every day, he grew a little more desperate. No money. No job. No one by his side. His family didn't visit him. Chanel forgot about him. His friends, because they all cared about his money or the money of his position. He had no one left. Ayana and Zaire started therapy. A psychiatrist named Dr. Amani. Washington gave the children space to process their parental betrayal. They went a week later. They talked about their anger, their resentment, their sadness, their fears. Dr. Washington told me that children are resilient, more resilient than they're said to be. But the adult's response is important. I provide consistency. I provide support. I provide security. This is the foundation upon which they build their lives, he said. If you strengthen that foundation, nothing will be able to bring them down. 6 months after my arrest, Marcus wanted to see me. A hearing in federal court I wasn't required to attend, but I wanted to go. I sat in the visitor's room. Her eyes were red. There were patches of graying hair. She'd lost so many pounds so slowly. 14 years of marriage, melting away in a minute. Why did you do this? She asked me. I didn't say a word. Why did you do this, Belle? Why do you always smile to set a trap for me? Why do you always hide information? Why? Why are you always like this? I thought about it. Then I spoke. Because you chose it, I said. You started lying. You started letting her see Chanel. You started stealing money. Every choice is your choice. I just decided to let her see your choices, your own consequences. She cried. She cried a lot. But I didn't move from my office. During the divorce, I was numb. Now, from the end of that day, I've simply had enough. 6 months later, my grandmother became ill. It happened quickly. Something was expected, but unexpected. Her body managed, but her mind couldn't start processing for a long time. For 3 weeks, my mother and I sat in the hospital. There was nowhere else in the world. Then he left. There were over 400 people at her funeral. Neighbors, church members, her children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, Keisha, Danny, Maria, vendors, customers, the entire neighborhood. In my speech, I said my grandmother said, patience is a weapon in the right hands. I said she taught patience throughout her life. She taught me patience. She taught me skill. She taught me strength. Then I said Belle didn't live to see my father's restaurant expand in the kitchen. But my grandmother Ava saw it. She knew it. She saw what he did in his last 2 years. Father, daughter, the whole family sitting on his floor. Then my mother cried. Uncle Frederick cried. The whole church cried. Then, 6 months later, the court's final verdict arrived. Marcus's sentence became official. 4 years. All the money. Restitution. No assets. No job. No hope. A life that had begun, I know. But that's no longer my concern. Because I was alive. My children were growing up. My restaurant. It was growing. The neighborhood was growing. All of us. The second location in the park was a success. Then the third. Then the fourth in Decatur. 5 years later, 5 locations. 10 times the employees. 100 times the customers. 100 times the scale of the business. One day, Ayana, now 14 years old, asked me in the kitchen. I was getting ready. She was preparing the salad. Mom, she said, have you forgiven Dad? I stopped there. 1 minute. Then I spoke. Forgiveness, I think, is just going to peace, I said. Forgiveness was wanting to hurt him. Peace. Not processing him. Not thinking about him. Not letting him control me. But are you still angry? I thought about it. True. Yes. A little. But there's no primary one anymore. Girl, I've wasted less time being angry at her. She's changed. Then I focused on myself. Looking after you. Looking after your brother. Looking after the business. Dad, if I could, instead of getting angry, I became a better person. So did she. I can't get angry anymore. I can't. He lowered his head. He stirred the salad, but his eyes looked lighter. Zaire, now 11, didn't say anything. He just stuck. In his therapy, I learned that children can pick up behaviors from their fathers, but enough consistent love can save it all. He receives consistent love. He receives consistent presence, consistent respect, consistent self-worth. He is completely fine. One day, 9 years after waiting for Marcus to be released from prison, a letter arrived. His handwriting trembles. Living inside with the bad guy. Just a bad guy. An apology. A request to return. A request for forgiveness. A request for exploration. I read the letter, then I burned it. Because this isn't my story anymore. This is his story. My story begins before that. It goes on after that. Us. The children. The restaurant. The neighborhood. The future. 5 years later, the day of Marcus's release arrived. Heavy heart, but calm. I already knew my children wanted to see him. The law allowed it. His visitation was supervised, on the condition that he had a job. I, Keisha, and Danny sat there. In the truth, Marcus was a worn-out man. 10 years in prison changes a person. He was withdrawn, silent, completely devoid of energy. Not a soldier, but like one. Dad, said Zaire, 9 years old, full of energy. She was about to give him a hug. Ayana stopped, carefully. She didn't recognize the father. The father she knew was gone. This one was different. Hello, he said to her, coldly, politely, but not unexpectedly. Dad, I miss you, Marcus said, tears streaming down his face. Ayana said nothing. She just held on, but not pressing down. She just paused. We talked, one after the other. Life, school, restaurant, science project, football games. Nothing emotional, just reality, cold reality, between two people. Years gone by. The part about healing or not healing. Marcus left. He went from one low-paying job to another. He washed cars. He chased after dilapidated houses. No success. No hold on to anything. Just survival. Ayana and Zaire's work spanned 9 years. Dr. Washington's approach became lighter as time went on. It just takes time. It just takes consistency. It just takes love. At 18, Ayana went to university. Howard like me. Business administration like me. But strong. Not sycophantic. Not a mirror, but a library. Mama, she said to me before the custom, thank you for the consistency. Thank you for the security. Thank you for showing me how a woman should live. I cried. A woman. Not a man's father, but a man's mother. Not a part of a marriage, but a part of an inheritance. A child, strong, knowledgeable, conscious. Zaire played soccer in high school. The president played soccer. An offer for university. A father figure, sometimes a letter, sometimes a phone call, but a mother figure every day. 16 years later, Marcus, he died. Tobacco. Heart. Not shock, but pain. Children. I sat beside him. Ayana at work. Zaire University. Both adults. Both problems. Both life. Dad's gone, said Ayana, just all of it. But you are here, Zaire said to me. You're always here. And that's the most accurate word to describe the whole story. The events in this part of the narrative leave lasting effects on the character. Each new development, combined with previous experiences, creates emotional pressure. This pressure directly affects decision-making processes. The person begins to question their self-confidence. This questioning turns into an internal conflict. The mind loses clarity. Thoughts become scattered. This disarray determines the rhythm of the narrative. Emotional intensity increases, and the story takes on a more complex structure. Marcus didn't come to see the new sign hanging on the restaurant door, but maybe he knew. Maybe he heard it was opening next door, in his own neighborhood, right here where I started. At the opening, there were over 1,000 people. The church, the neighborhood, old customers, new customers, the media. My grandmother Eva, if she were alive, would have been there. But the son, the father, wasn't there. No one called. No celebration. Just silence in life. Existing but not ending. That day, Ayana and I stood in the kitchen. She chose it after high school. She didn't come from Howard. She came to the restaurant. Not like me. Her own path. But she was by my side. Preparing the food. Learning recipes. Learning about her heritage. Mom, she said, what's the whole reason for this? Why so many? Why 5 locations? Why buying up neighborhoods? Training workers? All this. Big. I stopped. I put down the knife. I looked into her eyes. Because when my father tried to steal it, I said, my grandmother told me, girl, this isn't your inheritance. It's not the property. It's not the cars. It's not the job. Inheritance is what makes a person human. You can steal $1 million and leave tomorrow. But the toilet, the child, the young woman, the black woman who I can keep safe, who I can keep human, who I can keep on their feet, that's something you can never get away with. That's not for sale. That's not for failure by betrayal. Ayana listened. Then she spoke. Are you still angry at your father? The question is simple, yet probing. 9 years later, after 5 positions, after success, and yet he still asks me, are there feelings? No. I said, it's true. There are feelings. There's anger. There's disappointment. But I don't hold grudges. Grudges are wasted energy. And I, Dad, won't allow wasted energy. Dad, he's already stolen it all. Dad, he stole the money, the time, the peace. Dad wanted to break me, but I'm not resentful. I was shaped by my grandmother. I was shaped by my father. I was shaped by myself. Dad can't do that. Her eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. A young woman who understood power, even if it wasn't the power of forgiveness. 6 months later, Marcus's last letter arrived. Not from prison, from the courthouse. Loss of guardian, loss of home, loss of job, loss of family, loneliness, fear, fear of death. I didn't read the letter. I gave it to Ayana. If you want to read it, read it. If you want to know, know. But for me, enough. It's too long, too vague. Ayana, read it. Then she burned it. She said nothing. She just burned it and moved on. 3 months later, Marcus died. That's what the police told me. They went to the address and closed his eyes. He left no will. He left no possessions. No family number or friends. Just a body, a man. A guy who had left nothing but a road and a nightmare. What was the point of paying for a funeral service? Municipal funeral services. A simple coffin. No church. No flowers. No prayers. I won't go. Zaire won't go. Ayana won't go. As the story unfolds, a significant change is observed in the characters' inner world. Emotions that initially seemed clear become blurred over time. This blurring increases inner turmoil. The character struggles to make sense of their experiences. Questions multiply, but answers are delayed. This delay adds tension to the narrative. The mind constantly dwells on the past. The present loses its meaning. This disconnect becomes central to the story, and the development section takes on a deeper dimension. 8 years later, Ayana opened her own restaurant. Not with my help, but with my approval. With her own spirit, her own vision, her own legacy. Ayana's table, I said, from the brown-haired girl, from sweet geography, sweet memories, sweet hope. There were 1,500 people at the opening. I sat in the back row. Not an observer, but a participant. Not a mother, just a human being. Proud, dignified, quiet. Ayana spoke. My grandmother's he told the story. He told my father's story. He told my story. Not the beginning, not the middle, not the end, but the success. My mother, he said, didn't give me her inheritance, not her money. She gave me her manners. She gave me her patience. She gave me her strength. She taught me that there are times when you make choices. There are times when you choose bad people. There are times when life chooses, but you always make choices. Who you want to be, what you want to do, who you help. And I made my mother's choice. This. The first time I cried was while that girl was talking, in a setting that had nothing to do with me. My eyes, my face in something that had nothing to do with me. But it was related, always related. After graduating from university, Zaire went to work in social services, helping children, especially children from homes, broken families, trauma, and hardship, including bad guys. Work her father couldn't hear about, but work empowered by her mother. Mother, she said, what if father didn't choose? What if father didn't choose the path? What if father did choose? And I have children, children who need protection, children who need help, children who need work. I can do this because you showed me. I smiled. Tears. 10 years later, Ayana's second restaurant opened, after its fourth location in the park. A new location in the property's neighborhood. This time, high school kids were working. No experience, no skills, just hope, growth, security, and a desire for success. Ayana taught them the same thing I was taught, just like I was taught by my father. The chain didn't break. The chain stretched. The chain grew stronger. 5 years later, Ayana sat with me in the office. It was huge then. 9 locations, 100 people, millions of dollars in turnover. Mom, she said. A reply came from Dad, from prison. The last letter. Girl. Me the paper. Pushing was initially hesitant. Read, he said. To look at you. I read. Belle. I made a mistake. A huge mistake. Because of that ridiculous recording where I stole you. Your children. Your business. Your inheritance. All for myself. I've made 100 mistakes. But I've seen one thing, that you're alive. Looking at me. Even though you stole from me. Destroyed me. You're alive. You're strong. You're successful. You have children. And I am nothing. Nowhere. Nothing at all. But that's exactly what I deserve. I don't want forgiveness. I just want to know, did you take good care of the children? Are they successful? Are they happy? Because that's the only thing that matters to me now. The letter, the paper, the touch, it's all nonsense. I've never cried like this before. 9 years later, after success, after the inheritance, still, the pain, still, the times, still, the person, knew it with the very marrow of their being that they loved it. And I told them about my daughters. Yes, absolutely. Successful, happy, strong, well-raised, despite their father's choice by my side. The letter preserved. I simply kept it and put it in the church chest. Here, perhaps one day, Zaire or Ayana or their children, if they wish to understand, will be able to comprehend it. The father's first confession, the first repentance, the first, perhaps, love. Now, 30 years later, I am old. Ayana has 4 children. Zaire has 3 children. My grandchildren are growing up in my neighborhood. Ayana, she works at table. She's a visitor at Zaire's social services office. Generation after generation, the legacy left behind and the choice made. One day, Ayana's eldest daughter, 18 years old, in college, the one who does good, asked me, Theta Belle, he said, Theta, the old language for calling her to me. Have you ever forgiven your father? 30 years later, the question remains. Yes, I said, but forgiveness isn't simple. Forgiveness isn't wanting him to be bad. Forgiveness isn't allowing him to be again. Forgiveness is choosing every day to let go of resentment, to hold on. Forgiveness is to fail sometimes and choose again. But forgiveness is allowing Father to live with me, not to destroy me. And I chose to forgive a long time ago. Not for Father's insistence, but for mine, for his peace, for Father's faithfulness. I looked into his eyes. Young, strong, knowledgeable. What are you talking about? Which teaching, girl? Forgiveness isn't just for the other person, it's for yourself. Forgiveness is setting the person free. Forgiveness is reclaiming energy. Forgiveness is living. He bowed his head. He understood. Perhaps not completely, but enough. Perhaps one day, in his own time, in his own story, by his own choice. The sign, except for the fifth location, has the following written in gold letters: Carter's Kitchen. Below the sign, a small plaque reads, "In memory of Robert Carter, in honor of Ava Carter, in strength of Belle Morgan, in hope of future generations." This is a legacy. No man, no betrayal, no choice can change it. My name is Belle Morgan. My story began with my father's betrayal, but it didn't end with my father's choice. It began with me. It began with my strength. It began with my humanity, my intelligence, my patience. And this story isn't over. It's about what makes a father, why generations live, grow, choose, and build their own legacy. Maybe it's not what makes a father. Maybe it's the father's power. Maybe it's the father's success. Maybe it's the father's kindness. Perhaps, just perhaps, fatherly love has a constructive aspect to it, rather than destroying it. But I know Belle, Ayana, Zaire, the grandchildren, the neighborhood, we are the unstealable. We are the fatherless, the fatherless, the fatherless, the fatherless. We are the legacy. We are the heart. We are the strength. And that's it. If you are listening to my story, if you have walked this path with me, look at your legacy. Look at your choices. Look at the person you are. Because life is not just betrayal. Life is also resistance. Life is also resurrection. Life is also, girl, not forgiveness, but choosing love. My name is Belle Morgan, and I will always share my story of redemption with anyone. As this story ends here, what remains are not only the events that took place, but also the profound traces they left behind. Every emotion expressed, every silence, and every inner wound takes on a different meaning over time. Burdens that initially feel heavy transform into experiences that serve to help one discover oneself. What happened cannot be undone, but the connection to it can be changed. This change is neither quick nor ostentatious. It progresses silently, patiently, and often imperceptibly. As time passes, perspective softens. Thoughts that once weighed heavily on a person no longer carry the same weight. This isn't about forgetting or ignoring. Rather, it's the courage to accept what happened as it was. As it's accepted, emotions become more balanced. Instead of constantly dwelling on the past, the mind begins to focus on the present moment. The point reached at the end of the story is not a place where everything is completely resolved. However, it is a more genuine stopping point. At this stopping point, one can pause without forcing oneself. One looks at the past, neither completely turning one's back nor getting lost in it. One simply evaluates it with a distanced and clearer perspective. This distance provides an inner relief. The emotions that have accumulated throughout the narrative slowly dissolve here. Every scene, every moment has left a trace. These traces do not disappear with time, but they lose their weight. People learn to move on with these traces. They become more understanding of themselves. They reshape their expectations. They accept that life does not always offer clear answers. At this point, the story feels more like a pause than an ending. It creates space to catch your breath. It allows for a distanced perspective on what has happened. This distance clarifies thoughts. Emotions become more orderly. One begins to hear their own inner voice more clearly. Every narrative leaves a different impression on the viewer. This story, rather than offering definitive answers, opens up space for thought. Because some stories are told not to explain, but to evoke feelings. The impact they leave lasts longer than words. They merge with the viewer's own experiences. They generate new meanings. And perhaps that's where the true value emerges. When the story ends, what remains isn't an emptiness. It's a silence filled with awareness. This silence allows one to draw closer to oneself. The relationship with the past changes. The future is viewed with a calmer perspective. The journey continues. The narrative falls silent, but its impact endures. Because every ending is the silent beginning of a new thought. And every beginning opens up a space for a person to know themselves from a deeper perspective.